I hail from upstate New York, the Catskills, Liberty, New York, and I grew up way out in the woods. We went to New York a lot. It was about 2 hours away, and we saw a lot of shows. And I just knew I wanted to be an actress from the time I was probably 4. But there was nobody in the school who would do a play with me. Nobody else. There was no drama club or anything. So I did the Belle of Amherst for 2 years, which is a one-woman show, 11th and 12th grade. And I would do it wherever anyone would let me. I did it in people's living rooms. I did it for the VFW. We'd moved to LA so I could act. And I had a friend who was in Missoula, Montana. And I had one full-length play, and she said, "There's a playwriting conference, send it. And maybe we could spend a couple weeks together this summer." And I said, "Oh, my play is terrible." And she said, they're all terrible, send it. And so I did, and I got in, and I had no idea Marcia Norman was in charge of it. And she actually said the words, "You know you're a playwright, don't you?" And I said, "No, I have no idea that I'm a playwright." And she invited me to Juilliard, and we moved back to New York, and it changed my life. I think when you're writing, when you're in the middle of a play, it makes all of life more interesting. When I'm not working on something, life is just not as exciting. But when I'm working on a play, everything I see is fodder, and everything is makes my mind make connections, and so it makes everything richer and more colorful. I have friends who don't read reviews, and boy, I admire them. I don't have that will. I Google myself more than I should ever admit, and you just have to know that there's another play to write. There are people who will respond. Not everybody's. I've really learned. I used to think, well, everybody says not everyone's going to like your work, but my work. But no, not everybody's going to like my work. I have to write with a gun to my head, really. I have to have like a terrible deadline that gets the adrenaline pumping, and then it just pours out in a way that because all writing is making decisions, and I'm a very bad decision maker. It took us 12 years to decide what color to paint our kitchen. So the only way I can make a decision is if I don't have time to think about it too much. And that's the best way for me to write. I have to create deadlines. I have to sign up for something. I have to say, okay, I'll take 2 weeks from now at group so that I'll have to get something done. Sometimes it's just very character driven, and all I'm thinking about is what the character wants, and then I'm amazed when the set designer and director find it. With the Sirens, I actually kept seeing this blue, blue, blue Mediterranean, and this small gray New Yorker couple who had sort of lost their light and their color kept coming to me, so I wrote all that out. Sometimes characters just have their own idea about the story they're pursuing, and having somebody who had, as a writer, I'm always terrified that there's not another story to tell. There are always 20,000 stories more to tell, but when I finish something, I better have something else in the works, or I think, oh no, I will never ever write again. And that terror is so big and real that I thought, what if somebody really has one hit? There are a lot of people out there who have. And I had a friend who, an older man who had written one really great hit. And that inspired me. And he and his wife lived off it for their whole lives, really, that one song. Well, I think there's a few things that really were resonating for me at the time I was writing it. I had a few friends who had found old flames on Facebook, and suddenly their worlds were upside down. And it really seemed like a phenomenon. For like 6 months, that's all you read about in the paper was the marriages destroyed by Facebook. So I thought, that's really worth looking at. And also just being middle-aged and suddenly being an empty nester and realizing that what you've been working on for the past 18 years, that project is really on its own now. You're done with it in full time. And now what? It's really the now what and the terror of now what. And is my life over with another 40 years left to go? There's always something really dark that I write first. I wrote a lot of monologues for Sam about life being over and just the terror of mortality. Having a siren who will never die and doesn't understand what death is. So the biggest idea of death for her is when her handheld gaming device dies and she suddenly realizes batteries run out. I think that's something that everybody comes to face around 50. And what did it mean? When you think you have all the time in the world, there's not that big an impetus to really decide what life meant and what it meant to be here for the time we had. But when you sort of see the end somewhere in the distance, it's very powerful. Coming to the Hippodrome was really, I suspected just from my contact online that it was a real family. And getting here and meeting everybody, it's so obvious that people come here for a month and stay, that there's something really amazing happening here. I've never lived in a time when people didn't say theater was dying. From the time I was little, I remember wanting to be an actress at 10 and hearing people go, well, theater's dying. And I think we'll always worry that theater's dying, and there's something that theater does that no other medium does. And especially now when maybe going to the movies isn't that important an event, because movies can come right into your living room, right into your bedroom, right into your pocket. That I think theater does something really extraordinary that no other medium does, and people crave it.